You're missing them even when you're right. And that's the part no one talks about. You marked the level, you saw the setup forming. You even told yourself, if it taps, I'm in. And then it tapped. And you didn't take it. Now price is moving exactly how you expected. Clean, perfect, almost too perfect. And you're sitting there thinking, how did I miss that? But here's the truth. The reason you didn't take that trade was decided before the move even happened. And once you see this, you'll never look at hesitation the same way again. After the candle closes, after price runs exactly where you thought it would, after it's too late to do anything about it. That's when everything suddenly makes sense. You're staring at the chart now. Clean structure, clean break, clean retest. It looks obvious, like it was always supposed to happen this way. Like the market followed a script that everyone else could read, like you should have just taken it. And the worst part, you saw it. You actually saw it. You marked that level, maybe days ago. Maybe the night before, sitting in your chair with a coffee going cold beside you, drawing lines across your screen with that quiet, certain feeling that says, this is it. This is the one. You waited for that reaction. You even told yourself out loud, or maybe just in your head, in that voice that sounds almost like a promise, if it taps that zone, I'm in. And then it did. And you didn't take it. Now price is 30 pips away, or 1%, or 2, or whatever your market moves in terms you feel in your chest. Doesn't matter, it moved, without you. And now your brain is doing that thing again, that specific, exhausting, painfully familiar thing. Why didn't I just take it? You zoom in. You slow the candles down. You drag the playback like you're looking for the frame where it all went wrong. You trace the wick. You check the spread. You look at the volume like maybe, the answer is hiding in there somewhere. And it always feels like you were right there. Like you were one click away from catching it perfectly. One breath away from being on the right side of that move. But you didn't. And what's crazy is you're not a beginner. You know what a good setup looks like. You've studied this. You've watched hours of content, read the books, sat through the losing streaks, built the watch lists, marked the levels, written the journal entries. You understand structure, liquidity, risk to reward. You know when a setup is forming. You've seen this pattern dozens of times. You've taken hundreds of trades. You're not confused about the strategy. You're confused about yourself. Because in hindsight, you are a sniper. Calm, precise, effortless, every decision obvious, every entry clean, every exit perfectly timed. But in real time, you hesitate every single time. Let's go back, not to the chart after, not to that clean, perfect version your brain built once the risk was gone, back to before the move. Same chart, same level, same setup. But now let's actually feel what it was like to be there. Because it doesn't look so clean from inside that moment, does it? Price is approaching your zone, but it's not approaching cleanly. It's kind of choppy. There's a wick there you don't like, a little too long, a little too aggressive. Structure looks slightly messy. Not wrong, but not the textbook version you imagined when you drew the line. And your memory starts pulling up files without asking your permission. You remember the last time price swept deeper before reversing. You remember sitting there watching your stop get hit, then watching the market turn around immediately and go exactly where you said it would, just after taking you out first. You remember that fake breakout 2 weeks ago that looked identical to this. And suddenly, this setup, this a plus setup you were so sure about, it doesn't feel so a plus anymore. Your brain starts stacking scenarios, not because you asked it to, because that's what it does. It's trying to protect you. What if it taps and dumps lower first? What if this is just a liquidity grab? What if I'm early and there's a better entry coming? What if I'm wrong? Notice that last one. Notice how it whispers a little louder than the others. You're not analyzing anymore. You're negotiating with something that isn't interested in your analysis. And here's the moment. The exact, specific, microscopic moment where everything breaks. Price enters your zone. Your setup is technically valid. Every condition you defined is met. Your plan says, enter. Everything you prepared for is right here, right now in front of you. Your cursor is on the button, your finger is ready. And then one extra thought, just one. Wait, let me see one more confirmation. That's it. That's the whole gap. Not your strategy, not your knowledge, not your intelligence or your discipline or your screen time. That one sentence. Let me see one more confirmation. And while you're waiting for something that already showed itself, price starts to move. Slow at first, a tick, maybe two. Enough to make you think maybe it's still okay, maybe there's still time. Then faster. Then a candle closes outside the range. Then another. Then the momentum picks up and suddenly the setup you were analyzing is now just a launching pad in your rearview mirror. And now you're safe. No risk, no exposure, nothing open. Nothing that can go against you. And here's the strange part, the part that nobody really talks about in this exact moment. Something in you almost relaxes. Not completely. Not without the sting of the miss. But underneath the frustration, there's a quiet exhale. The decision is gone, and suddenly everything becomes clear. Your brain is calm now. No pressure. No tick-by-tick tension. No, is this it? Is this the entry? Do I pull the trigger? Running on a loop in the background. So now it simplifies everything. That was a clean break and retest. Structure held perfectly. That was obvious continuation. I can't believe I didn't take that. Of course it looks obvious now. Of course the structure is clean. Of course everything aligns perfectly when you look at it from the other side of the outcome. Because there's no uncertainty anymore. The fog has lifted. The move already happened. Your brain isn't predicting anymore. It isn't calculating risk or managing competing narratives. It's explaining. It's building a story that makes everything make sense. And that story feels exactly like clarity. But it isn't. It's reconstruction. Your brain looked at a completed move and built a narrative that says it was always going to happen that way. That the path was inevitable. That anyone paying attention could have seen it. And it's convincing. It's almost too convincing. This is why you feel stuck, not because you lack skill. Not because you haven't done the work, but because every time you miss a trade, you don't remember what it actually felt like to be inside that moment. You only remember what it looks like after. So the lesson you take away isn't the real lesson. The lesson you take away is, I need to trust my analysis more, or I need to be more disciplined, or I just need to commit and execute. And those things aren't wrong exactly. But they're aimed at the wrong target, because the real problem isn't that you failed to execute. The real problem is that you think the setup was clear when you missed it, but it wasn't clear. Not in real time. In real time, it was noisy. It was messy. It was full of competing possibilities that all felt equally plausible, and your brain did exactly what it was built to do. It protected you. Not from a bad trade. Not from a losing position, from the feeling of being wrong, from the experience of watching money leave your account after you made a decision, from the risk of acting and being punished for acting. That's what your brain was managing in that moment, and it was doing it beautifully, efficiently, instantly. So when that moment came and you felt the hesitation, your brain didn't malfunction. It worked perfectly. It said, wait, be careful, don't rush. There might be something you're missing. Let's just see one more thing first, and you listened. Because some part of you, some very ancient, very efficient part of you, found that instruction more immediately compelling than any trade plan you could have written. That's why this keeps happening, not because you're weak, not because you lack conviction, not because you need to watch more videos about mindset or read another book about discipline. But because you're fighting the wrong thing. You're trying to manufacture confidence, trying to talk yourself into certainty, trying to get to a place where the setup feels undeniable before you act. But that's not how this works. Your brain doesn't need encouragement, it needs certainty. And the market never gives you that. It gives you probability, it gives you pattern, it gives you edge. But it never ever gives you certainty. So your brain creates a loop. Before the trade, uncertainty feels like danger, so it pumps the brakes. It slows you down. It floods you with alternatives. It finds the wick you don't like and builds a case around it. After the trade, the outcome is known, so it rewrites the story. It simplifies everything. It makes the entry look inevitable. And every single missed trade reinforces the illusion. It was obvious. It always feels obvious after. And every new setup that forms, every fresh moment of approaching a level and feeling that tension build, this one is different. This one will finally feel clear enough to take. So you wait. And you hesitate, and the move happens. And again, it's obvious after, again and again and again. Until one day, you find yourself sitting there looking at a chart that looks perfect, and you realize, I've been here before. I've sat in this exact feeling more times than I can count. And I'm still in it. Let me show you something subtle. The next time you catch yourself staring at a setup after the move, after the entry point has passed, and the trade is already unfolding without you, pause. Don't zoom out. Don't start hunting for the next opportunity right away. Zoom in. Find the exact candle, the exact bar, the exact tick where your plan told you to enter. Go back to that specific moment on the chart and hold it there for a second and ask yourself one honest question. What did I not know at this moment? Not what you know now, sitting on this side of the outcome with a closed candle and a visible result. What you didn't know then. You didn't know if that level was going to hold or break. You didn't know if price was going to sweep lower first and then reverse, or reverse right there. You didn't know if some news event was about to spike the market into chaos. You didn't know if this was going to be the one that confirms your edge or the one that breaks the pattern and costs you. That's the environment you were operating in. Not this clean, annotated hindsight version. A fog. A real-time, unresolved, probabilistic fog where anything could still happen. And inside that fog, with real money and real risk and real consequences, your brain looked at the available information and chose safety. It prioritized protecting you over rewarding you. And it will always do that by default unless something changes. The shift isn't about execution, not at the level most people think about it. It's not, I need to be faster. It's not, I need to just pull the trigger. It's not some mechanical fix or breathing technique or pre-trade ritual. The shift is more fundamental than that. It's accepting, really accepting, not just intellectually understanding, but actually absorbing in a way that changes how you experience the moment. That clarity only exists after. That's it. Clarity only exists after. The setup will never feel clean enough before the move, because clean is a story that can only be told once the outcome is known. Before the move, you are inside the uncertainty. You are in the fog, and the fog is the game. And once that sinks in, once it really lands, something changes in how the setup feels. You stop waiting for it to feel obvious, because you understand now that obvious is a feeling that belongs to the past, not the present. You stop looking for that extra confirmation, because you recognize what that extra confirmation really is. It's delayed certainty. It's you asking the market to make the decision for you so you don't have to carry the weight of it. And by the time the market makes that decision clearly enough to satisfy you, the entry is gone. You start to notice hesitation differently, not as a random failure, not as a discipline problem that pops up unpredictably, but as a systematic response with a pattern. It shows up at the same point every time, right before commitment, right before the moment where the outcome is no longer theoretical, right before you have to hold something open in real time and accept that you might be wrong. That's where hesitation lives. That's its address, every time. And once you can see that, Once you can watch yourself walk up to that moment and feel the brakes engage, something subtle shifts. You're no longer surprised by it. You're no longer fighting it like it's a malfunction. You're watching it from a slight distance. Like you're observing something that's been there the whole time, running quietly in the background, and you're only now starting to see its shape. Because the market isn't testing your strategy. Not really. It's testing your tolerance for not knowing, your willingness to act inside uncertainty without needing the uncertainty to resolve first, your ability to sit in the fog and move anyway. And that's not a skill you build by reading about it. It's not something you acquire from a video or a course or another framework. It builds through repetition, through the experience of being in the moment enough times that you start to recognize the pattern from the inside. Through watching yourself hesitate and not collapsing in frustration but staying curious, staying observant. What's happening here? What is this feeling? Where exactly does it appear? What does it say? Because right now, most of the time, you only feel comfortable when the outcome is known, which means you only feel confident about setups that have already played out. Which means your confidence lives in the past, not the present. And every chart that exists in the present, every level approaching, every setup forming, every moment that actually matters carries the weight of the unknown with it. And your brain doesn't like the unknown, so it builds a story to protect you from it. And the story always sounds reasonable, always sounds like analysis, always sounds like one more variable worth checking. But it's not analysis. It's avoidance wearing the mask of analysis. That's the thing most people never see. Because from the inside it feels identical. That's why everything makes sense after. Because after there's nothing left to lose. No decision hanging in the air. No risk waiting to punish you. Just a closed candle and a clean story your brain assembles in under a second. I knew it. I saw it. I just didn't take it. And that story protects something. It protects the idea that you were right, even though you weren't in the trade. It preserves the narrative that your analysis was correct while letting you off the hook for not acting. But if you slow down and look at that story honestly, you didn't know. Not in the way that word usually means. You suspected, you planned, you prepared. You identified the possibility and gave it structure and weight. All of that was real, but you didn't know. And that's not a weakness. That's just the nature of what this is. That's trading. Every single entry point that has ever made someone money existed inside uncertainty. Every clean move that looks inevitable in replay was a coin flip in real time with odds in someone's favor. And the people who caught it weren't certain. They were just more comfortable with not being certain. The traders who move through this phase, and it is a phase, even if it feels like a permanent condition, they don't get there by becoming more confident in the traditional sense. They don't suddenly develop the ability to know what the market is going to do. They become more comfortable acting without knowing. They stop chasing the feeling of certainty and start asking a different question. Not is this going to work, but is this good enough to take? And that sounds like a small change, but it isn't. Because is this going to work is a question about the future. It's asking for certainty. It's asking the market to guarantee something before you'll participate. And the market never answers that question, not before the move. But is this good enough to take is a question about the present. It's asking, given what I know right now, given the pattern and the structure and the context and my edge, is this a moment worth engaging with? And that question can be answered, not with certainty, but with enough to act. Because good enough feels uncomfortable. That's the thing. It doesn't have the clean, settled, confident feeling you're waiting for. It still has a little uncertainty at the edges. It still leaves room for being wrong. And that's exactly why most people don't take it. They sit with good enough, and they feel the roughness around it, and they think, maybe if I wait just a little longer, it'll become, definitely. Maybe one more confirmation will turn this into something undeniable. but definitely doesn't exist before the move. So they wait, and the move happens, and it was definitely a good trade after. So the next time you're watching price approach a level you've already marked, and that tension starts building in your chest, that specific physical feeling that shows up right before the moment matters, I want you to notice something. Not the setup, not the structure, not the pattern or the indicator or the confluence. Notice the voice, the one that appears in that exact moment. The one that says, wait a little longer, just one more confirmation, let it be clearer, let's just see what happens. That voice has a particular quality to it. It sounds thoughtful. It sounds prudent. It sounds like it's watching out for you, and it is watching out for you, but it's not watching out for your trading. It's watching out for the version of you that doesn't want to be wrong. That doesn't want to feel the particular specific pain of making a decision and watching it go against you. That would rather miss a clean move than sit inside the uncertainty of having something open. And that voice will show up every time, every single setup, every clean level, every moment where execution actually counts. And it will cost you every clean move you ever see unless you start seeing it for what it is. Not logic, not analysis, protection. Because the market doesn't reward clarity, not the kind of clarity that comes before the move. That kind doesn't exist. What the market rewards, if that's even the right word, is action inside ambiguity, commitment inside the fog. The willingness to be wrong and do it anyway because the probability is in your favor, and that has to be enough. And until that becomes real to you, not as an idea you've heard before, not as something that makes intellectual sense, but as something you've actually felt in your body in real time during a live trade, until then, you'll keep living in this cycle, where every trade you didn't take was clean, was obvious, was perfect, and every trade that's forming right now feels questionable. And you'll keep telling yourself in that quiet, certain way, next time I'll take it, until the next time comes, and it feels exactly the same. The level approaches, the tension builds. The voice shows up right on schedule, and somewhere on the other side of that moment is a candle that will look obvious once it closes. You've been here before. Maybe more times than you'd like to count. And the strange thing is, even knowing all of this, even feeling its truth somewhere underneath the frustration, the next time will probably feel different. It will probably feel like this one is clearer, more valid, more certain, and you'll stand at the edge of that moment again, cursor on the button, that familiar voice whispering in your ear. And somewhere in that moment, if you stay quiet enough, if you watch carefully enough, you might actually see it happening. Not just feel it, see it, the whole thing. The fog and the story and the voice and the protection and the reconstruction. All of it running in real time, right there in front of you. And that seeing that moment of actual clear observation is a different thing than anything that came before it. Not a fix, not a solution, not a new technique to apply next time, just seeing. And sometimes that's where something starts to shift. If this landed somewhere real for you, somewhere you actually recognized yourself, drop a comment below. Tell me the part that hit closest. I read them, and if you want to keep exploring what's actually happening inside the mind during live trading, subscribe. New videos come out every week. This is what we do here.